Strategies to pause, stop, and reverse immigration in America. A policy analysis. Since the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965, the United States has seen a notable rise in its foreign-born population, growing from a modest count in 1970 to a much larger one by 2023, 47.8 million, according to Pew Research and census data. This shift has sparked debate about whether the nation could pause all immigration for a time, stop it entirely, or even roll it back to the smaller levels seen before 1965. Each approach would demand a mix of existing laws, bold new policies, and navigating steep practical and political challenges. This analysis digs into these options, drawing on today's immigration framework, past examples, and demographic trends to weigh their feasibility and consequences. Temporarily pausing all immigration. A temporary halt to all immigration could lean on the president's authority and administrative tools. Under a key section of the Immigration and Nationality Act, the president can block entry of foreign nationals if they're seen as a risk to national interests, a power used in the 2017 travel ban and 2020 pandemic restrictions, which slashed legal entries significantly. To pause everything, a national emergency might be declared, perhaps tied to economic or security concerns, stopping all visas, from tourists to students to family reunions. The State Department could shut down visa processing worldwide, much like during the 2020 consular closures, while border officials could lock down land crossings, turning away everyone, including asylum seekers, as seen in recent years with millions expelled under emergency rules. A year-long pause could sharply reduce arrivals, though gaps in enforcement and legal pushback might limit its reach. Permanently stopping immigration. Ending immigration for good would mean dismantling the current system entirely, a leap far beyond the tight quotas of the 1924 Immigration Act. Congress would have to scrap the 1965 Act and later laws, wiping out all visa categories, both permanent and temporary, and setting admissions to zero. The U.S. would also need to pull out of international asylum agreements and repeal domestic refugee laws, moves that would ignite fierce opposition at home and abroad. Physically halting illegal crossings. Millions of unauthorized residents were present in 2022, per Pew, would call for heavily fortified borders with walls, drones, and constant patrols, far outstripping past efforts like the costly border wall built in recent years. Even then, completely sealing thousands of miles of borders is a tall order, especially given the economy's reliance on immigrant workers and the political firestorm it would trigger. Reversing post-1965 foreign-born population. Shrinking the foreign-born population, 47.8 million in 2023, mostly arrivals or descendants since 1965, back to the 9.6 million of 1970 would mean removing tens of millions of people. A mass deportation effort, far larger than the mid-1950s removal of about 1 million, would require a vastly expanded immigration enforcement system, costing billions beyond its current budget and likely needing constitutional changes to include naturalized citizens or their American-born children. Another tack could push self-deportation by blocking work permits, cutting off benefits, or adding exit taxes, though past attempts show only modest results. Undocumented numbers dropped over a decade but stayed high. Without new arrivals, natural decline could eventually trim the foreign-born share somewhat by 2065 as older immigrants pass away, but it wouldn't reach the low mark of 1965. Context and feasibility. Since 1965, immigration has brought growing numbers of Africans, Asians, and Hispanics, projected to reach millions more by 2065, though their totals still lag behind the massive European waves before that year. Winding back to a foreign-born population as small as 1965's would mean displacing most of these newer groups, upending industries that depend on millions of immigrant workers and likely triggering humanitarian fallout. The African-descended population, now at 47 million and expanding through births, adds another layer of complexity beyond just immigration controls. Conclusion. A temporary pause on immigration could hinge on swift executive moves, but permanently stopping it faces legal and physical roadblocks too vast to fully overcome. Reversing the post-1965 surge to match 1965's smaller foreign-born share, 47.8 million down to a fraction of that, would demand either an unworkable mass expulsion or decades of slow decline, both stretching beyond today's legal, economic, and logistical limits. While these ideas can be imagined, turning them into reality remains out of reach.